This is The Writing of God with Dr. Miles Jones.
Welcome back to The Writing of God. We have such a cool teaching. We need to teach you the mechanism of how our time machine can find solid anchor points in the far distant ancient past. We've already talked about the anchor points and the king list that provide the data that we need to count forward and back on the timeline in the past. Now that we have assembled the mechanisms of our time machine, we are going to try it out. But this is not the old guesstimation timeline. This is no kind of old-timey jalopy of yesteryear. This is a new, souped-up machine that is far more powerful and precise. This is scientific methodology at its best. So it is time to jump in and check it out by taking a spin through the past. But first, let's talk about how we got this brand new time machine. It starts with Archeoastronomy, which is a form of getting information from the ancient past with time and space-specific aspects. In other words, if you can find a record in the ancient past of a celestial event, then we can retrocalculate it and give you an exact time when that event happened, no matter how far back in the past it is. Now, this field was pioneered by Elizabeth Chesley Beatty. She named the field, she wrote 8 articles during the 70s, and by the 1980s, it was a going concern. So our time machine is using this archaeoastronomy technology, and this is incredible stuff. The orbits of the stars and planets can be calculated by modern mathematics, no problem, to predict eclipses, for example. And we can not only predict them, we can retrocalculate them in the past if they're in the ancient records. So software programs like Redshift or Starry Night can predict celestial events by calculating the regular orbits of the sun, stars, and planets. They are so precise they can even produce a video of the event. They can retrocalculate them in the past if described well enough in the ancient records. Edwin Thiele was the mastermind who scientifically validated the biblical chronology using archaeoastronomy, invented by Elizabeth Chesley Beatty. Thiele started with the Sagal eclipse recorded in the Assyrian eponym Canaan. Okay, Sagal, he was the servant of the king Ashur-dan III, the Assyrian king, who would sit up on the pyramid drinking coffee and recording all the celestial events in the record. So he reports that in the 7th year of Ashur-dan's reign, he reports a revolt in the city of Ashur. In the month Simanu, an eclipse of the sun took place, obviously spooking the population. That eclipse took place June 15th, 763 BC. Now, think about this. That means the 7th year of Ashur-dan, the king of Assyria, was June 15th in the year 763 BC. So we can now take that, we have an anchor point in the Assyrian king list, and we can take that and count back to Shalmaneser. He's on the king list, and we know his reign was from 858 to 824. Why Shalmaneser III? Well, Shalmaneser III, in his 6th year, 853 BC, defeated an alliance of kings in Canaan, including King Ahab, which ended the reign of King Ahab. So this puts us in Scripture. This puts us into the biblical timeline written in the Bible. And here it is in 1 Kings 22:31 through 35. Now the king of Assyria, Shalmaneser III, had commanded the 32 captains of its chariots, saying, "Fight with no one, small or great, but only with the king of Israel. Go straight for King Ahab and defeat him." The battle increased that day, And the king, Ahab, although grievously wounded, was propped up in his chariot, so he was facing the Assyrians, and he finally died that evening. Straight from Scripture. So Shalmaneser's 6th year, 853 BC, ended the reign of King Ahab in 853 BC. A perfect match and anchor point, establishing the biblical timeline as correct. So, if we can figure this out, what else can we do? For example, when was the exact date of the Exodus? It's also in 1 Kings, and it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel. Remember that. Solomon's 4th year. You count back 480 years, and you know exactly when the Exodus began. The Exodus from Egypt began. So Solomon's 4th year was 966 BC. Remember, we have the biblical timeline. It's in the Bible. We should just count forward on it to 966 BC. Now we have to adjust 400 years. 400 years to get back. Remember, that's in 1 Kings. 480 years before Solomon's 4th year of his reign. So we add that. Remember, we're in the BC period, so we're counting backwards. So we adjust 480 years for the date of the Exodus, which began, and we adjust for 40 more years to the wandering, which means the conquest of Canaan began in about 1406 BC. All this comes from the brilliant mind of Elizabeth Chesley Beatty, and has now been developed into a modern scientific theory. They didn't have that software in those machines when she was born and first came up with this idea. She began writing in the 70s. It wasn't until 83 when Edwin Thiele took advantage of her concepts and had the software and the computing capacity to actually figure out the orbits of the stars and retrocalculate eclipses. I happen to know Elizabeth Chesley Beatty. I met her when I was 5 years old. My mother took me into her house. She came to visit her. My mother and Elizabeth Chesley Beatty were extended family. They both grew up in the small town of Hamilton, Texas, and knew each other well, as extended family tend to, growing up in the same small town. And they both became writers, so they had a very incredible animated conversation. Can't tell you how many times I have wished that I could have sat there quietly and soaked up as much of their conversation as possible. But I really didn't have any interest in that at the time. I was 5. I wasn't impressed at all with all of the many rows of books on her bookshelf. But as time went on, I became interested in ancient inscriptions, and my mother gave me some of Elizabeth Chesley Beatty's books to read, and they were very eye-opening for me. So I suppose that you could say that I have followed in her footsteps. Elizabeth Chesley Beatty was my great aunt. I'm not sure exactly what the familial title should be, but that's the way I think of her. I knew her father better than her. We visited his house often. Hervey Chesley, somewhat of a savant himself. He had rows of bookshelves also. So I have since inherited some of her paintings, found her poetry, and so I'm kind of surrounded by her writing and her influence. She's even on my family tree. She haunts my childhood memories. One thing we do know about Elizabeth Chesley Beatty is that she shined a great light on the process of retrocalculation of celestial events. She left a great light for all of us to follow. I deeply wish that I had had the chance to know Elizabeth Beatty better. In our next teaching, we're going to show you how the new technology of archeoastronomy can revolutionize the process of understanding the timeline of ancient history. So don't miss it. I will see you then.
The Writing of God will continue in just a moment.
I'm Dr. Miles Jones, and we have prepared for you an amazing teaching series called The Writing of God. We're going to take you to Mount Sinai and examine all of the evidence of the Exodus, both old and the newly discovered evidence that we've just brought back. Evidence that has been hidden from you for 3,500 years. Why hasn't this evidence been revealed before? Pretty simple. You know there's an anti-God agenda going on in the universities. The secularists have decided that the Bible is merely a fable. The Exodus, a legend. The mountain of God, nothing but a myth. And this is what they're teaching our children in the universities. This is their major tool for stripping our children of their faith. But I can tell you, we have been there. We've been to the mountain. We've examined the evidence. We've found the footprints of the Israelites there with alphabetic inscriptions. We have translated these alphabetic inscriptions, and they tell a story that comes straight from the pages of Exodus. We've been to Moses' altar. We've been to Aaron's altar of the golden calf. We've been to Rephidim and the split rock, and we're going to take you there because the truth of the Bible is something you need to know. And we have the scientific evidence of the truth of the seminal event of the Old Testament, the Sinai covenant. And we're going to bring it to you in the writing of God.
That's The Writing of God, P.O. Box 294047, Kerrville, Texas 78029, or online at thewritingofgod.com. Will you seek the Lord about becoming a partner to bring the message of the Writing of God to more people? Send your gift to The Writing of God, P.O. Box 294027, Kerrville, Texas 78029, or online at thewritingofgod.com. That's The Writing of God, P.O. Box 294047, Kerrville, Texas 78029, or online at thewritingofgod.com.